Hi guys, welcome back to the Bodhi Tree Surfboards YouTube channel. Jono and I have just been to Dumplings. He said to throw a bit of humour in there, but I can't think of anything, so we're just going to get started. So what we're going to do is start on the shaping process. So basically everything up until this stage has been the build, so it's the construction of the board. So the construction of the board is very straightforward in that it's clunky step by step. You can change whatever you want, but the way that I'm trying to instruct you guys and girls, obviously that's what it means, is to achieve success the first time. Normally what I would say if you're going to do a DIY kit is just follow the instructions the first time. Then if you want to reinvent it, do it after you've created a board and you know why we do it this way. The shaping process is a little bit different in that this is the art of building a board. How you shape the rails will tie into the rocker that you've set, the length of the board, where you've decided to put your fin position. All of those things are going to come together. But shaping the rails is probably the thing that will turn it into a surfboard. Okay, it is pretty technical. And what we'll do is just step through it as we can. It might be a little bit disjointed, so what we'll probably do after we've done Jono's build is smash them all together and do a concise shaping video, which is the whole thing. But basically what we're going to do is start with the rail that we've created on here. So I'm going to draw a few pictures. So basically what we've done is started with a square rail. Now all I've done with that router bit is rolled the edges, but the perfect rail shape is in there like that. So we've got a little bit of deck roll coming over and then it comes into the rail and down. So a traditional rail shape is 50-50 at the nose, and what a 50-50 rail means is that the middle of the rail is 50%. So 50% at the top, 50 at the bottom. The midpoint of the rail is 50-50, yeah? So 50-50 from the nose to a third down the board, and then there's a transition into a 60-40 rail. So a 60-40 rail is not like that. That's probably more 70-30. You know what I'm trying to say. If that's 60 there, then it rolls around and that's the midpoint there. So 60-40 through the middle. Your hand has the perfect shape. So if that's 50-50, that's 60-40, and that's 70-30. So 70-30 through the tail. Now when we shape boards in the workshop, we work on the top rail for a long time because the top rail is aesthetic. And what that means is basically that it's all just about the feel. There's not a lot of functionality in the top rail. The bottom rail is what will determine how the board works. So the top rail is where you cut your teeth, it's where you make your mistakes and things like that. And when you get to the bottom rail, it has to be done basically correctly from the start. And the very last thing that we do is shape the tail into the board, or the tail rail. So this is the most functional element of a surfboard, is through here. Technically this is the first fin on a surfboard, is this tail rail. The fin on a surfboard just stabilizes a term, but actually how this rail shape and the rocker tie together is how, and the tail shape will determine how the board turns in the water. Okay. So what we're doing is taking a square, and we want to put the perfect rail shape in it, and it's a bit of a nice 60-40 rail, but it's a bit of that Leonardo da Vinci. Who's the dude that shaped the statue of David? Michelangelo. He said that basically the statue of David was inside the block of marble, and he just had to remove what wasn't it. And that's exactly what we want to do with the rail. The way we're going to create this curve is not by rolling a shape, it's actually with straight lines. So we're going to cut a curve with straight lines. So initially the first rail shape is a square, then you've got 3 facets, so each facet is a flat, and then we take off the peak, so you've got 5, take off that peak, take off that peak, take off that peak. You get the idea, and it will start to round off. Now the tool that we're going to use to do that primarily is a rasp file, so otherwise known as a flat bastard file, but basically it's a rasping file. The most effective way to use the file is the full length of cut. So this is a push file, so the most effective way to use it is to push it. Technically you shouldn't pull on a push file because you'll blunten it. I don't care. In the workshop it's more important that people get into a rhythm. So what I say is that a pass is a backwards and forwards motion. So you're going backwards and forwards, and that's a pass. Now, one thing that you don't want to do is roll the rail. So you don't want to be cutting the rail like this. Are you watching down here, Johnny? And the reason for that is that what will happen is that you'll start to get grooves. And these grooves over time will become worse and worse. Oh, we've got dumplings coming up. And what you'll get is a wave in the rail, and that's what you don't want. So a pass of the file is up and down, but what we want to do is extend it across and back. But that's on a single plane. Yeah? And being a single plane, it's just a flat pass. Okay, so each time I do a pass, I'm going to tilt my wrist a little bit, and this is going to drop or raise, and that's a facet. So one pass, tilt, one pass, tilt, one pass, tilt, one pass, tilt, and that's actually going to create, that's going to create this. So I'm going to do one pass, one pass, one pass, one pass, one pass, and that's going to create the curve. Now the rail will drop off all by itself, so definitely don't aim for the middle. I'm going to do a little bit just to show you how I would start on here. So normally what I do is walk backwards. And as I walk backwards, what I'm doing is blending the rail. So what you should be able to see there is that it started to roll. So we've gone from a shape that's basically coming off and rounded at the corner to it starting to flow off the deck. And this is the first aesthetic. So this curve starts at the middle of the board, it comes around, and basically the radius of that curve just tightens. So the rail itself aesthetically is just a join from this deck to this deck that you don't want to feel where it starts and ends. So the first passes are going to be pretty close to flat up against the deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to there, and that's it. That's all you need to do for your first couple of laps, is go around like that. But every time you take a layer off, this line will drop down all by itself. Don't get it into your head that if you get to the middle the rail's finished, because what you'll do is create a horrible rail that will look like it's finished, but it will feel like a dog's breakfast. That's generally where I'd say to start. The most important thing is the feel of it, so you want to feel it. What we might do is set up the camera static and get just so you can see what it looks like of Jono learning how to use that file, because it'll go from something that's pretty ugly to watch until he gets the rhythm, and then you'll see that once he gets that rhythm and the motion, that it becomes very clean. Now, one other thing I'm going to mention before we start is that if you imagine that we roll this rail out flat, so instead of being a curved surface, it's a flat surface. So we've basically rolled it out, and each pass I want to do is a line. So if I do a pass, I want to do a pass there, and then a pass there, and a pass there, and a pass there, and a pass there. And what that's going to look like is this: pass, 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 pass. What you don't want to do is make it look like this. And what that looks like is this. Because your head's going to go, oh, I'm doing lots. You're not. And it'll make it harder in the end to actually correct everything. So get into a real rhythm of a pass, a pass, a pass, and each incremental change. If you have a look here, Jono, each time I change my wrist, this is the same, or basically it will just lift up a little bit as you roll around. You get the idea. And you can do it like that, it's just more efficient if you use the whole face of the blade. So, you're a lefty. So basically what we want to do is create a roll off the deck that's going like this. The most effective way to use the file is the full length of the file, but we want to move along at the same time. So you could just move along like this, but you're only going to be using that much of the file. So what we want to do is move and then tilt it. So basically this will rise up 5 mil, 10 mil, or 5 mil. And then again. Like you got a Patrick Swayze on there, Ghost, yeah, but so I'm going to do it with this hand. So it's that, back, and then a tilt. This way. So the reason that the tape is on here is so it doesn't damage the board when you first start, but you'll know because you'll scratch it. Yeah. Yeah. Now what you don't want to do is do this sort of stuff. So it's really flat. So if you go like this, the most effective way to use the file is the full length. What you want to do is use the full length. That's it. Perfect. Now, just one other thing. A lot of what I do when I'm removing the meat, so I say there's 3 stages to shaping. The first is removing the meat, the second is shaping, and the third is refining. If you can do all those 3 at the same time, the rail will become nice and clean and consistent. What I do a lot of is I tilt the file. So I tilt the file so I'm just using the edge few teeth, so maybe 3 lengths of teeth, and that will cut a lot more than if you use a flat face, which is like a blending pass. So what you can do is tilt it. And even if that's, yeah, so initially all you're trying to do is understand how the file works. So it doesn't have to be correct, you just want to pass it. And if you start like that, and even if it's just one facet, if you just go right, I'm going to take that off the whole way around the board. that'll be it. In saying that, I'm going to draw some lines up here so Jono doesn't go into the nose. The nose is a different trajectory around that curve, so just leave the nose and the bottom rail until later. Okay, so we finished today. We don't know what number day it is anymore. So Jono started his shaping, and what you can see that he's started to get this roll into it. As always, there's a bit of a learning curve, and the learning curve is making mistakes and understanding why the mistakes were made. So it's not a bad thing to make the mistakes, it's just a good thing to look at them. You can get these things which are a profiling gauge. They use them for cornices in plastering and stuff. But what you can see is that Jono's starting to get that roll into the shape, which is fantastic. So you can see different parts of the board and the different roll that's coming into there. So it's nice and clean, which is exactly how we want it. So with the shaping, there's always a point that will come where you just lose your eye. So what we say in the shop is that when you can see the wall, it's time to walk away. Never try and push through it, just come back, and you'll only ever build the board that you're building once, so you're better off taking your time and doing it properly. And Jono's done a great job. Well done, Jono. We'll be back next time we're back. With a few more technicalities. So there's a fair bit more to go on the top rail, and then we'll flip it over, and the bottom rail is a bit more technical, and we'll talk more about how a board works when we flip it over. And that's it. Thanks, Jono.